Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Omar Quraishi with another edition of the Omar Quraishi View, the podcast that I've been doing for some months now. Usually it's me, myself, talking to the camera, and I thought that we should have some people who have a lot to talk about, especially in the current climate. And one of them is a very old friend of mine, very dear friend, and I got to know him when he started writing for the paper I was working at many years ago, the News and the Express Tribune, and he is a very well known, very witty commentator, nationally known. He's also hosted radio shows. He's also an expert communications consultant, and these days I've seen him a lot on Twitter, Facebook, and he's I mean the whole country seeing that he's like the master of memes and witticisms. I'm talking about Fasi Zaka. Assalamu
Walaikum salam. Thank you for telling me. Um,
you're welcome. So I mean, initially we just obviously there's the past 12 hours we've seen a lot of stuff go down, even the past 3 4 days, and I mean I would assume that we will focus a lot on the media portrayal and the nonsense that we saw across the border 2 days ago. You also must have seen it and all that, and how media is covering it or not covering it, and the messaging that's coming across. But let's just start off with the general question: that what do you make of the past? Let's say maybe from May 7th. What happened? Pakistan was attacked. Then Pakistan, they had that exchange in the air, and 5 Indian jets were shot down. Three of them were, or four of them were independently verified. And then what happened in the past 12 hours?
So I think that the roots of this are all the way back to 2019, जहाँ से India decided that any form of domestic terrorism, especially in Indian-occupied Kashmir, would be responded with kinetic action into Pakistan because they wanted to inflict costs
And without proof.
and without proof because they would do it immediately. Problematic for one major reason because if you've occupied an area since independence, if you have over, you've got 8 lakh soldiers there will be very well documented series of domestic oppression in that area. You don't need an external power to sponsor anything.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous to assume that a 14-year-old child who's seen something, who's been abused some way, he would not get up. I mean, and the whole thing is like this. It's just the way that, the Israelis used to present 12-year-old children throwing rocks as some form of high-end weaponry. And so for them to automatically blame Pakistan is hugely problematic, partly because it signifies an escalation, which is official Indian policy. And it's happened again recently. But I'd argue that there was also a period of Pakistani non-response. There was a series of assassinations carried out in Pakistan, which were effectively ignored. The same assassinations have also been going out abroad. It created a huge diplomatic problem with Canada, for example. And now I believe that, are just seeing the results of hubris and,
Yeah.
the sort of expansion of India into its formal role as a hegemon in the region. And so they went ahead. I'd argue that Pakistan's immediate response has been shocking in the sense that we knew that we had a superior air force in terms of technical abilities.
Definitely.
Didn't know that how they had gamed this out in advance, and it's caused losses to Indian assets. Now, the problem with this is, I believe, is that this particular humiliation is what caused the operation to continue.
Yeah.
Essentially, they said, done and dusted, Sindoor is gone. And then they reapplied it again because,
I think you also came up with the word Operation Tandoor in your tweet.
yes. I mean,
That you are the one who coined it.
yes. I was happy to see that it really caught on because the idea was कि Sindoor का जवाब है Operation Tandoor, we turn up the heat.
Yeah.
Obviously, now the response operation is named something very different and quite difficult to remember. And
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least it caught on for a while. But I also think that, domestically in Pakistan, we were shocked at the level of irresponsibility and the extent to which India thought that it could ramp up its escalation. And so while we've now gone into uncharted territory, it seems like we've been successful. But of course, in the fog of war, misinformation from both sides tends to take hold. We'll find out more in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, yep.
but I mean, one thing that is absolutely clear is that, Pakistan had no choice to respond this way. I think the only de-escalation ramp available to us was when we shot down their jets, and
Yeah.
potentially both sides could have declared victory. Um,
Yep. They should have. Yes. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, the argument is also that we could have averted the crisis, but the fundamental problem of India sending in missiles and drones would not have been responded to.
Mm.
And that is like an absence of deterrence. So, I mean, it's a difficult one, but I do think like the de escalation ramp, that was our only real opportunity. But now I think it's only until both sides realize that this is going to get extremely messy and could go on for much longer than both would prefer that we'll have some kind of issue.
So, two questions coming from that. One is that we heard earlier this morning, Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, called up and spoke to the Pakistan Army chief. I believe that's the first time he's done that. Till now, he was talking to the foreign minister or the prime minister, and he's been quoted as saying, and the State Department also issued a statement that he called them up and offered his help in de-escalation. A and B, you might have heard of or seen the Indian Defense Ministry press conference, or maybe that one part where they're saying that we will not be. This is after the I guess the hiding that they got earlier in the day, or whatever you want to call it, and they said that we will not seek to we will not escalate, and we want to de-escalate unless Pakistan again does something. So, what do you make of these two? I mean, what inferences can we make, or would you make from these two?
I think,
You think de-escalation might happen, or
I
Modi
mean,
can't be trusted, or
I don't think he's a trustworthy figure, but I think ultimately, though, it will have to happen.
it'll have to happen? Yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of things at play.
Mm.
The Indian military spokesperson who said that, they're very different from Pakistan in the sense that their military is actually subordinate to their civilians.
That's an important point. Yeah.
And so, unless the civilians themselves say something to that effect, this is like basically their B team speaking. We need their civilians to say something to the effect that we're looking,
Like their defense minister or something.
their defense minister or their security advisor, any of the civilians. The second thing, as far as it goes to Marco Rubio, I think that there are many strategic elements at play over there. Number one is like India falling into this historic animus is not the reason the Americans are allied to India. They're allied to India because they want to grow India as a competitor to China. And if it gets distracted in this sort of thing with an immediate and smaller neighbor, it's not what the Americans signed up for. Number two is also what is clear, and I think this is the story to have emerged. I mean, the story really should have been that two powers are at war and the threshold for nuclear use is actually fairly low. And that should be the fear the world has. But the story is actually that Chinese weapons are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everyone आपको thought कि ये टीमू कमाल है
Yeah. Yeah.
हम चकला खरीद रहे हैं and
Yeah.
secondly, it's been established that this is actually world beating tech.
Yeah.
And for America to let this go forward, you have to also look at it as an interest as a military power that it has a significant impression. You've got a whole bunch of third world dictators they sell to, and they would probably think, okay, maybe the Chinese are now battle tested. So I think like there's also that interest at play right now.
Okay. So, but you said that America is in backs India, but we saw maybe that in the past, since the Pahalgam attacks, and especially since May 7th, so Trump twice was asked, and both times he said he overtly didn't really side with India. In fact, he said that I know both the countries really well, and they should, first he said they should sort it out, and they've been battling for 1,000 years, which went viral, and then he said I can help if needed. But you're right, absolutely right. And I think there's also the thing of we haven't talked about Israel, but China. They want to clear up India as a counter to China, but as you said, that the combat showed that China is like a winner, and
Yeah,
so maybe America will have to recalibrate its whatever it needs to do in this part of the world for to have countries that can stand up to China, because clearly the Indian Air Force won't stand up to China.
is not up to the job. It's not up to the
Not up to the job with the Pakistan Air Force either. So,
exactly.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting that you say about Trump because I agree. He hasn't sided explicitly, and that's a relative win for Pakistan.
That's a surprise and it's a win for sure.
Yeah.
Because
And
Modi likes to say that he's his best friend and he's in media. Yeah.
you see, Modi didn't do one thing which I think Pakistan has done, which is quite strategic, is that, I mean, Trump is also not an honest power broker.
Yeah.
He's not one that keeps the interests of his country forefront. He
Mm.
keeps the interest of his family business first.
Yeah.
The fact that we set up a crypto council
Yeah.
and brought in all his people. I mean, he loves Pakistan now.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
We have got direct relations with his son-in-law,
Yeah.
with his son's business partners. The moment we had this crypto thing starting going forward, when that guy came to Pakistan, Richard Grenell stopped tweeting, deleted everything.
Yeah.
And I would argue that this is actually, a form of political cronyism that has helped a
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
right now. Because otherwise, like you said, I mean, it would have been more than likely. But Trump, as bad as he is a bit of a maverick in some things. I think the way he's playing now with the Middle East and especially Israel, who's extremely upset at how he's excluded them from his decision making. I also think that, one is our own overtures to Trump recently, but also, and I was speaking to Shayan Mahmood, and he said this to me, and I found this very interesting. He says, Pakistan is not a country that wins in perception in the international arena, ever. And the fact that we are on an even keel today is a reflection of the bellicose and unwarranted nature of India, which is hard to defend.
Mm.
And the fact that, we've taken some precaution to avoid escalating, we've shown restraint. And and to be honest, I mean, like, all those drones coming into Pakistan, it was this hope that Pakistan would react disproportionate. And again, because Pakistan did not really do that, it did react. But then
But after its bases were attacked,
after its bases were attacked. So we are in a better position because I think the lure was that India has been saying we haven't attacked Pakistan, we've attacked terrorist camps. But when they lost patience and finally did attack what was effectively the state of the country, the heart of the PAF, because they're attacking the very arm of the military that has humiliated them. I personally feel that that is what has so far kept us at this point where our actions rather than our narrative has been creating this sense that, we can't evaluate Pakistan in that traditional derisive manner
anymore.
but looks at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's a consequence of the way obviously the response and the way especially the Pakistan Air Force has acted and reacted and performed in recent days.
Absolutely. And,
So,
and to be honest, like, one way that I'd also look at it is that India is definitely a superpower in the making. India has an economy that's amazing. India has cultural power that is phenomenal, but it is letting much of that go to its head in the sense of how it deals with partners, because it looks at almost every partner as a subordinate, as it comes with almost a sense of insecurity. And I just argue is that the way the Indian Cricket Board has behaved in the past 5, 7 years, the idea was to isolate Pakistan, but ultimately it has irked everybody.
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 Yeah, it's a extension of the way the Indian government works. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I personally feel this time round, we're on a better and more even keel.
Hmm. So moving forward, given like for instance, like I said about the de-escalation, what do you see happen in the next couple of days? I guess it depends a lot on how India now reacts or doesn't react, and will there be? Would we see? I mean, obviously, war is not good for anybody, for India or for
Absolutely.
Pakistan or for people in the region or for even the world. What would you see happen in the next few days, and then we'll go on to maybe a less serious topic.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would be a little apprehensive of predicting anything because
Uh,
I'm not very good at wargaming this out, in particular, or not an expert in the area. But I mean, I have read informally somewhere that there is a chance of some kind of cessation for a while.
Ismail, yeah,
Yes. And the second thing that I'd also argue is that this intervention by the US is actually quite important.
yeah, because directly talking to the army chief.
You're talking to the army
Yeah.
chief, you're talking to the Indians,
Mm.
you're establishing a link. You are also signifying that, yes, we're not interested, but तुम लोगों की लड़ाई इतनी बढ़ गई है कि like
I will have to now
we have
stop.
to now. And I think part of that is also that a lot of people, because one of the reasons we shot down the Rafales was they had no ideas the capabilities of the missiles that the Chinese had provided us
Yeah,
on an
yeah.
emergency basis. And so a lot of people also view this conflict, while it's still bilateral, but ultimately it's a trilateral conflict because our immediate supply routes are, whatever, even now, if we're doing any form of cyber warfare, I doubt it's all being run on our end. We will be having support with an ally like China. So I think
Mm.
there is an incentive to sort of contain this right now. And I'm hopeful that something or the other will happen. Um, it will also depend on either side not championing too much.
I mean, also depend, like you said, India being a bit more humble, which
Yeah.
I don't know how it can be with the Modi and the BJP, but they might have to be
हाँ, हमें अपना ही एक जहाज गिराना पड़ेगा. We do the remote pilot. It'll be over then.
to make
Ah,
them happy.
yes.
So moving on now, I mean, I think I wouldn't say your field, because I think your field is a lot of things, but you're obviously have a lot of things, important things, wise things and insights on media.
Yeah.
So what about, obviously, I mean, we know that Indian media covered it in a terrible way and continues to cover it.
Yeah.
And we saw that absurd thing that they did 2 days ago, for which they kind of apologized even in a way. But what do you make of it? I mean, we can use the peg of the reporting that Karachi has fallen and Karachi port is burning and Islamabad has fallen. Why would the Indian media do something like that? I mean, I'm assuming they were told by the Indian establishment to do that, or what? Are they that deluded? Why would they do something like that?
So I
You
think
being also comms, you're also a
yeah.
communications expert.
Yeah.
So what did they possibly achieve?
So I think it's three things. One is the media ownership structure, which is a lot of the massive conglomerates own some of these places. And since Gujarat, uh, as chief minister, Modi has been very aligned to big business, where he's managed to grow economies. And they are obviously, in that sense, indebted to him because he creates that enabling culture. And as they've acquired media units, they have a very strong incentive to support the government because their media is also by and large anti-Congress now. And
Yes.
and as these independent units have been sold, we've also seen that a lot of the more amazing journalism units that used to exist, they've gone by the wayside and their standards have not been upheld. The second thing is also the profits of direct to audience, which is that we've seen that nuance does not engage people. That extreme views.
It's an Arnab Goswami type style.
Arnab Goswami, right? So Arnab Goswami is a charlatan who's motivated by profit. He's not an Indian patriot. I think so once again, I mean, I think both of these things together, there's also a third thing. And the third thing I'd argue is that any time a state has an emergent middle class is, in the throes of prosperity, is becoming regionally powerful, their middle classes tend to encourage this kind of behavior. Like the middle class becomes a bastion of regressive ideas, which unfortunately I think is also happening in India. And I think that something that's also happening worldwide, Pakistan is no exception, is ideas, intellectuals, experts are no longer being valued or being incorporated into the ecosystem. Now, the person whose value is the greatest is whose voice is the loudest.
True.
And I'd argue that, because of India's relative success, it's become really massive over there. Pakistan, unfortunately, we've been having 10 years of domestic problems, of polarization. We don't have a Modi-like figure. Uh, and the one we probably have in terms of popularity is in jail. So for us, I think that, one of the things that I've been proud of, and maybe unfortunately it stems from our troubles, is that Pakistanis have been way, way more humane, I'd argue respectable, in their responses to extreme rhetoric from Sangi trolls.
Especially on social media. I mean, you mean come on social media and Twitter especially.
Absolutely. I mean, on occasion, there are some distasteful things like जब उनका green का मजाक उड़ाते हैं when they say pishap and this and that. But I mean, that's unfortunate because Pakistan also has Hindu citizens who are
Yeah, exactly.
but again, I'm happy to think that, that's rarer than from the other side. It may not be because of our innate goodness, but we have to acknowledge that if you look at the pedestal, we're on a higher pedestal.
And so, I mean, that's what you think explains the fact that during all this conflict, Pakistanis have become popular also because of like the use of memes and humor and all that. Whereas if you see most Indians, they like either don't get the humor or they just start with the abuses immediately.
हाँ, तो उनका यही है कि like they are extremely arrogant. They see no, they see no two sides to any argument. They also are, projecting a deified version of what Modi is, that he is without fault, without sin. तो पाकिस्तान में you ask anybody, right? वो तो पहले 100 गाली अपने मुल्क को देगा, then he'll go. And what that has done is that I believe, like when the world sees what we are saying, it is rooted in a weird kind of humility and a much more accurate self-reflection, of which these people acknowledge that we're not perfect. But ये जो कर रहे हैं हमारे साथ, this is absolutely in the wrong. And that's why I believe that, this is why this time round, it irritates Indians so much, because I think their version of conflict is humorless. It is entirely rooted in some kind of almost nationalistic superiority. And nationalistic superiority means dissent, and they've been extremely irritated by Pakistanis who's not taken their threat seriously. That's one of the things that really irritates them. वो कह रहे मजाक क्यों करें, ये किस किस्म के लोग हैं? But the real thing that bothers them is that कि हमने उनकी मर्दानियत नहीं मानी, या हमें धमकी दे रहे हैं और हम वहाँ से मजाक कर रहे हैं.
We're laughing at them.
Yeah, so it's like undermining their masculinity.
True. So, just one last question that I had before we end. Do you see maybe I mean, like you said, the media in India is totally pro BJP, and
Hmm.
for whatever reasons, financial reasons, other reasons. Do you see? But with this, I think kind of, I mean, for instance, there were 4 5 jets that were crashed. They still haven't accepted them officially.
Yeah.
So you can't hide that. Their families will eventually start demanding, and I think after a while, even the Congress party is probably going to see, especially what happened today. I mean, it's been quite humiliating for India, and a lot of more things will come out. Do you see it affecting his next election? He might lose, or also, I mean, there have been stories that uh, Congress never wanted the Rafale fighter jet, and also the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which is their official buyer for all these things, was kept out of the loop. And Anil Ambani, which is one of the Ambani brothers, did the deal for India because he's Modi's friend. And
Yeah.
also, apparently, the defense minister at that time in 2017 then resigned. And I remember I was wondering, and he was a BJP guy, and then he became chief minister of Goa. So he probably was sidelined and pushed there. So all of that might come out, and it might, you know, like I said, you can't hide. Social media is there, and a lot of the Indian media is talking thing, but there's a lot of citizen journalism, obviously, on both sides of the border. So people are going to post stuff about things happening in northern India, western India. People will wonder, like you said, that Karachi was destroyed, but actually our airport has been destroyed. So won't his credibility take a big hit? And you think it might affect his election, or he's like the Hindutva ideology and the fact that India is dominantly Hindu will help him get elected again? I mean, I know it's very difficult to predict, but what's your gut feeling? Will it affect his?
So my gut feeling is somebody on the distance and not that well versed with India. My gut feeling is one is I didn't know this amount of detail on the Rafale sales, and I find that extremely interesting.
Mm,
Uh, and I do think that would become an issue going forward. I also believe that it will dent his popularity.
mm,
However, I believe that he will still win the elections. And the reason for that is the cult of Modi remains strong. There's a lot of mistakes he's made, whether it was in demonetization, whether it was during COVID. And he seems to have that Teflon quality because
mm,
Hindutva itself is strong. And the second most important thing is that there is no credible opposition. That if I do believe he could have lost had there been somebody who had resonated with the people. And I do believe Rahul Gandhi is making an emergence. I believe AAP is stalled, but I think he will win more due to the fact that the others can't get their act together than him having done a good job.
True, true, valid point. So thank you, Fasi, for agreeing to come to my podcast, and it
Thank
was
you
a
so much.
pleasure talking to you, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Inshallah. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
And thank you.